Hello Fanatics, welcome to Diamond Painting Fanatics. It's Thursday, so therefore I am here for you and we are going to discuss a true crime. I have a quick question before we begin. Would you like more than one a week of these true crime episodes? Because I have so many that I want to discuss. So I'm curious, would you like more than one a week? Let me know in the comments and any suggestions on who you would like for me to research and have a look into. Also pop that down there and I will get on it. Okay, so this is the story of Lizzy Borden and it's to do with the Borden murders. Have you heard of this story? Apparently it's quite well known, although I haven't personally heard of it, but it did take place in 1890s, 1890s. So yeah, let's get to it. Feel free to grab anything you are working on and come join me. I'm very curious about this case, and don't forget to leave your comments down below on this story. Okay, episode. Okay, so Lizzy Borden was born on the 19th of July in 1860 in Fall River, Massachusetts, to Sarah and Andrew. Her father grew up in a very modest surroundings and struggled financially as a young man, but despite being a descendant of wealthy and influential local residents, but he did eventually prosper in the manufacture and sale of furniture and caskets, and then he became a successful property developer. He was a director of several textile mills, owned considerable commercial property, and was also the president of the Union Savings Bank and director of the Durfee Safe Deposit and Trust Company. And when he died, his estate was valued at $300,000, which is a lot of money. But in 2019, that's the equivalent to 9 million. Just like, wow. I mean, he wasn't around in 2019, but wow. Okay, so despite his wealth, he was known for being a bit of a skinflint. And the Borden home lacked indoor plumbing, although it was a common accommodation for wealthy people at the time. He lived in an affluent area where the wealthiest residents of Fall River generally lived in the more fashionable neighbourhood known as the Hill, which was further away from the industrial areas of the city. So Lizzy and her older sister Emma had a relatively religious upbringing, and Lizzy attended church, and she was very involved in that church, and including being a Sunday school teacher to recent immigrants to the United States. She was involved in Christian organisations such as the Christian Endeavour Society, for which she served as a secretary and treasurer, and contemporary social movements such as the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and she was also a member of the Ladies' Fruit and Flower Mission. So 3 years after Sarah died, which is Lizzy's and Emma's mum, Andrew married Abby. It's known that Lizzy called her Mrs. Borden, but I don't think they got on very well, basically. She believed that Abby only married her dad for his wealth. Bridget, who is known as Maggie, was their 25-year-old live-in maid who had immigrated to the US from Ireland. And she testified that Lizzy and Emma rarely ate meals with their parents, and in May 1892, Andrew killed multiple pigeons in his barn with a hatchet, believing that they were attracting local children to hunt them. Yeah, we don't want children hunting pigeons, do we now? No, that'll never do. But Lizzy had recently built a roost for the pigeons, and it's been commonly said that she was really upset with him because he was killing them. And then a family argument in July 1892 prompted both sisters to take extended quotation mark vacations in New Bedford. After returning to Fall River a week before the murders, Lizzy chose to stay in a local rooming house for 4 days before returning to the family's residence. Tensions had been growing within the family in the months before the murders, especially over Andrew's gifts of real estate to various parts of Abby's family. After Abby's sister received the house, Lizzy and Emma had demanded and received a rental property, which was the home they had lived in until their mother died, which they purchased from their father for a whopping $1. Yes, $1 single. And a few weeks before the murders, they sold the property back to Dad for $5,000, the equivalent to $142,000 in 2019. The night before the murders, John Morse, who is Uncle John, well, I'm going to call him Uncle John because he was Emma and Lizzy's mum's brother, so he is Uncle John to them. Yeah. He visited and was invited to stay for a few days to discuss business matters with Andrew, and some have kind of speculated that their conversation, particularly about property transfer, may have aggravated an already tense situation. But several days before the murders, the entire household had become violently ill. A family friend later speculated that mutton left on the stove to use in meals over several days was the cause, but Abby feared poisoning, as Andrew had not been a popular man. But by the sounds of it, Abby wasn't that popular either. So, yeah, when I read that little bit, that the entire household became ill. I've done too many crime shows and I've watched way too many crime shows. It's poison. So here we go. I say so a lot. I do apologise. Here we go. The murders. 4th of August 1892. Uncle John, as he now will be known, arrived in the evening of August the 3rd and slept in the guest room that night. After breakfast the next morning, at which there was Andrew, Abby, Lizzy, Uncle John and Maggie, the maid. They were all present. And Andrew and Uncle John went to the sitting room, where they chatted for nearly an hour. Uncle John left around 8:48 a.m. to buy a pair of oxen and visit his niece in Fall River, planning to return to the Borden home for lunch at noon. Andrew left for his morning walk sometime after 9 a.m. Now, it's bizarre that they are so specific that Uncle John left around 8:48 a.m. You know, around, it's either 10 to, quarter to. Oxen is cattle. I had to look that up, but okay, he's gone off to buy some cattle and visit his niece and come back for lunch. That's the plan. Although the cleaning of the guest room was one of Lizzy and Emma's regular chores, Abby went upstairs sometime between 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. to make the bed, because Uncle John can't make a bed. According to the forensic investigation, Abby was facing her killer at the time of her attack. This gets a little bit graphic, I think, just putting it out there, but you know, with these true crime episodes that discretion is advised. But she was first struck on the side of the head with a hatchet, which cut her just above the ear, causing her to turn and fall face down on the floor, creating contusions on her nose and forehead. Her killer then struck her multiple times, delivering 17 more direct hits to the back of her head, killing her. You're not going to survive with a hatchet in your head. An axe, essentially. When Andrew returned around 10:30 a.m, his key failed to open the door, so he knocked for attention. Maggie, the maid, went to unlock the door. Finding it jammed, she uttered something, an expletive. She would later testify that she heard Lizzy laughing immediately after this. She did not see Lizzy, but stated that the laughter was coming from the top of the stairs. Ooh, point 1 towards guilt. This was considered significant as Abby was already dead by this time, and her body would have been visible to anyone on the home's second floor. Lizzy later denied being upstairs and testified that her father had asked her where Abby was, and she had replied that a messenger had delivered Abby a summons to visit a sick friend. Well, that's an outright lie. This is getting more interesting. So, point number 2, pointing to guilt. Lizzy stated that she had then removed Andrew's boots and helped him into his slippers before he lay on the sofa for a nap, an anomaly contradicted by the crime scene photos, which show Andrew wearing boots. Point number 3. She then informed Maggie of a department store sale and permitted her to go, but Sullivan felt unwell and went to take a nap in her bedroom instead. Wow. Maggie testified that she was in her 3rd floor room, resting from cleaning windows, when just before 11:10 a.m. she heard Lizzy call from downstairs, "Maggie, come quick, father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him." Oh, come on. Andrew was slumped on a couch in the downstairs sitting room, struck 10 or 11 times with a hatchet-like weapon. One of his eyeballs had been split cleanly in two, suggesting that he had been asleep when attacked. His still bleeding wounds suggested a very recent attack. Dr. Bowen, the family doctor, arrived from his home across the street to determine that both victims had died. Well, they hadn't died. Doctor would turn up and say, "Oh, dear Auntie Ethel has died in her sleep." Anyway, detectives estimated his death had occurred at approximately 11 a.m. So at 10 past, she's yelling, "Maggie, come quick, father's dead." That doesn't quite fit, does it? Because she would have been covered in blood, or, well, she could have been trying to help him, I suppose. Anyway, I have to remember I'm not an actual detective here. Investigation. Lizzy Borden's initial answers to the police officers' questions were at times strange and contradictory. Well, even I've picked that up. Initially, she reported hearing a groan, a scraping noise, or a distress call before entering the house. 2 hours later, she told police she heard nothing and entered the house, not realising that anything was wrong. When asked where her stepmother was, she said Abby received a note asking her to visit a sick friend. She also stated she thought Abby had returned and asked if someone could go upstairs and look for her. Maggie and a neighbour, Mrs. Churchill, were halfway up the stairs, their eyes level with the floor, when they looked into the guest room and saw Abby lying face down on the floor. Most of the officers who interviewed Lizzy reported that they disliked her attitude. Some said she was too calm and poised. Despite her attitude and changing alibis, nobody bothered to check for bloodstains. Police did search her. Don't mind me, you go to work. Police did search her room, but it was a cursory inspection, meaning a quick look around. At the trial, they admitted to not doing a proper search because Lizzy was not feeling well. Oh my God. They were subsequently criticised for their lack of diligence. I was going to say, I'm going to try that. I just say, I don't feel well. Can you come back? In the basement, police found 2 hatchets, 2 axes and a hatchet head with a broken handle. The hatchet head was suspected of being the murderer's weapon, as the break in the handle appeared fresh and the ash and dust on the head, unlike that of the other bladed tools, appeared to have been deliberately applied to make it look as if it had been in the basement for some time. However, none of these tools were removed from the house because of the mysterious illness that had stricken the household before the murders. The family's milk and Andrew and Abby's stomachs, do we really need to go here? Removed during autopsies performed in the Borden dining room were tested for poison. None was found. Residents suspected Lizzy of purchasing hydro... I can't say that. Acid in a diluted form from the local drugstore. She defended that she inquired about the acid so she could clean her furs, despite the local medical examiner's testimony that it did not have antiseptic properties. Oh my goodness me. She's so done it, surely. Lizzy and Emma's friend, Alice Russell, decided to stay with them the night following the murders, while Uncle John spent the night in the attic guest room, contrary to later accounts that he slept in the murder site guest room. Police were stationed around the house on the night of August the 4th, during which an officer said he had seen Lizzy enter the cellar with Alice, the friend that's staying, carrying a kerosene lamp and a slop pail, a bucket. So this copper's watching them take a bucket and a lamp down to the cellar. He stated he saw both women exit the cellar, after which Lizzy returned alone. Although he was unable to see what she was doing, he stated it appeared she was bent over the sink. Oh dear me. On the 5th of August, Uncle John left the house and was mobbed by hundreds of people. Police had to escort him back to the house. On August 6th, police conducted a more thorough search of the house. Well, that's going to be good, isn't it? Because she's now cleaned up. Inspecting the sisters' clothing and confiscating the broken-handled hatchet head. That evening, a police officer and the mayor visited the Bordens, and Lizzy was informed that she was a suspect in the murders. The next morning, Alice entered the kitchen to find Lizzy tearing up a dress. She explained that she was planning to put it on the fire because it was covered in paint. It was never determined whether the dress she had been wearing on... It has never been determined whether it was the dress she had been wearing on the day of the murders. I mean, come on. You're all screaming that she's guilty too, aren't you? I know we're talking in the 1800s and they didn't have DNA and fingerprints and all of that, but they've botched this from the beginning. Inquest. Lizzy appeared at the inquest hearing on August the 8th. Her request to have her family attorney present was refused under a state statute providing that an inquest must be held in private. She had been prescribed a regular doses of morphine to calm her nerves, and it was possible that her testimony was affected by this. Her behaviour was erratic, and she often refused to answer a question even if the answer would be beneficial to her. She often contradicted herself and provided alternating accounts of the morning in question, such as saying she was in the kitchen reading a magazine when her father arrived home, then saying she was in the dining room doing some ironing, then saying she was coming down the stairs. She also said she removed her father's boots and put his slippers on, but police photographs clearly show him wearing his boots. Oh, and you can say she's in shock, but she didn't imagine taking his boots off, yet she said it. So, you know, something's not right. The district attorney was very aggressive and confrontational. On the 11th of August, Lizzy was served with a warrant of arrest and jailed. The inquest testimony on the basis for the modern debate regarding her guilt or innocence was later ruled inadmissible at her trial in June 1893. Newspaper articles noted that Lizzy possessed a stolid demeanour and bit her lips, flushed and bent toward Attorney Adams. It was also reported that the testimony provided in the inquest had, quote, caused a change of opinion among her friends who have heretofore strongly maintained her innocence, end quote. The inquest received significant press attention nationwide, including an extensive 3-page write-up in the Boston Globe. A grand jury began hearing evidence on the 7th of November, and Lizzy was indicted on December the 2nd. Reese's birthday. Not in 18 whatever year. Lizzy's trial took place in New Bedford starting on the 5th of June 1893. Prosecuting attorneys were Knowlton and future United States Supreme Court Justice William Moody. Defending were Andrew Jennings and Melvin O. Adams, and former Massachusetts Governor George D. Robinson. 5 days before the trial's commencement on the 1st of June, another axe murder occurred in Fall River. This time the victim was Bertha Manchester, who was found hacked to death in her kitchen. The similarities between the Manchester and Borden's murders was striking and noted by jurors. However, a Portuguese immigrant was later convicted of the Manchester's murder in 1894 and was determined not to have been in the vicinity of Fall River at the time of Abby and Andrew's murder. A prominent point of discussion in the trial, or the press coverage of it, was the hatchet found in the basement, which was not convincingly demonstrated by the prosecution to be the murder weapon. Prosecutors argued that the killer had removed the handle because it would have been covered in blood. One officer testified that the hatchet handle was found near the hatchet head, but another officer contradicted this. Though no bloody clothing was found at the scene, Alice Russell, who was the friend that visited after, testified that on the 8th of August 1892 she had witnessed Lizzy burn a dress in the kitchen stove, saying it had been ruined when she brushed against wet paint. During the course of the trial, defence never attempted to challenge this statement. Lizzy's presence at the home was also a point of dispute during the trial. According to testimony, Maggie, the maid, entered the second floor of the home at around 10:58 a.m. and left Lizzy and her father downstairs. Lizzy told several people that at this time she went to the barn and was not in the house for 20 minutes or possibly half an hour. Quote. Hyman Lubinsky testified for the defence that he saw Lizzy leaving the barn at 11:03 a.m. and Charles Gardner confirmed the time. At 11:10, Lizzy called to Maggie downstairs. Told her Andrew had been murdered and ordered her not to enter the room. Instead, Lizzy sent her to get a doctor. This bit is a little bit gruesome. They don't do this anymore, thankfully. Both victims' heads had been removed during autopsy and the skulls were admitted as evidence during the trial and presented on the 5th of June 1893. Upon seeing them in the courtroom, Lizzy fainted. Evidence was excluded that Lizzy had sought to purchase the acid supposedly for cleaning sealskin cloak from a local druggist on the day before the murders. The judge ruled that the incident was far too remote in time to have any connection. I mean, how remote do you have to be the day before? But okay. The presiding associate judge, Justin Dewey, who had been appointed by Robinson when he was governor, delivered a lengthy summary that supported the defence as his charge to the jury before it was sent to deliberate on the 20th of June 1893. After an hour and a half of deliberation, now we know what this means. Usually, if it's a quick, when they come back quickly, we generally know what's going to happen. However, the jury acquitted Lizzy of the murders. Upon exiting the courthouse, she told reporters she was, quote, the happiest woman in the world. Now, this is someone whose parents have both been maliciously, brutally murdered. And she's the happiest woman in the world. The trial has been compared to the later trials of Bruno Hopton, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, which I'm going to have to look up, and O.J. Simpson, as a landmark in publicity and public interest in the history of American legal proceedings. Now, the speculation. This is just like appalling, but okay. Although acquitted at trial, Lizzy remains the prime suspect in her father and stepmother's murders. Writer Victoria Lincoln proposed in 1967 that Lizzy might have committed the murders while in a drug-fueled state. Another prominent suggestion was that she was physically and sexually abused by her father, which drove her to kill him. There is little evidence to support this, but incest is not a topic. To me, incest is very different to sexual abuse. Incest is like consensual, although weird, but it is, and they're very different. So incest might not have been a topic discussed at the time, but was sexual abuse? We don't know. Probably not, but and the methods for collecting physical evidence would have been quite different in 1892. This belief was I don't know what this is. Intimidated. It's not. Okay, so it was in the papers at the time of the murders and was revisited by a scholar called Marcia Carlyle in a 1992 essay. Mystery author Ed McBain, in his 1984 novel Lizzy, suggested that she committed the murders after being caught in a lesbian twist with Maggie. He elaborated on his speculation in a 1999 interview, speculating that Abby had caught Lizzy and Maggie together and had reacted with horror and disgust, and that Lizzy had killed Abby with a candlestick in the drawing room. With a candlestick. When Andrew returned, she had confessed to him but killed him in a rage with a hatchet when he reacted exactly as Abby had. McBain further speculates that Maggie disposed of the hatchet somewhere afterwards. In her later years, Lizzy was rumoured to be a lesbian, but there was no such speculation about Maggie, who found other employment after the murders and later married a man she met while working as a maid in Butte, Montana. She died in Montana in 1948, where she allegedly gave a deathbed confession to her sister, stating that she had changed her testimony on the stand in order to protect Lizzy. Another significant suspect was Uncle John. He rarely met with the family after his sister died, but had slept in the house the night before the murders, according to law enforcement. Uncle John, as I call him, but had provided a, quote, absurdly perfect, over-detailed alibi for the death of Abby, end quote. And he was considered a suspect by police for a period of time. Others have noted potential suspects in the crime includes Maggie, the poor maid, possibly in retaliation for being ordered to clean the windows on a hot day. The day of the murders was unusually hot, and at the time she was still recovering from a mystery illness that had struck the household. I mean, that is absurd. It's ridiculous. But, you know, let's go with it. She's really annoyed. She's really hot. She's still recovering. She's been told to clean the windows, so she's going to take an axe to two people and, like, 18 times to Abby and 10 times to Andrew. I mean, over cleaning windows. A William Borden, suspected to be Andrew's illegitimate son, was noted to have be a possible suspect by writer Arnold Brown, who surmised in his book Lizzy Borden, The Legend, The Truth, The Final Chapter, that William had tried and failed to extort money from his father. However, author Leonard Rebello did extensive research on the William Borden in Brown's book and was able to prove he was not Andrew's son. Although Emma had an alibi at Fairhaven, about 15 miles from Fall River, another author proposed in his 1984 book that she might have secretly visited the residence to kill her parents before popping back to receive the telegram informing her of the murders. Really. After the trial, the sisters moved into a large modern house in the Hill neighbourhood of Fall River. Around this time, Lizzy began using the name Lisbeth. At their new house, which Lisbeth dubbed Maplecroft, they had a staff that included live-in maids, a housekeeper, a coachman. Because Abby was ruled to have died before Andrew, her estate first went to Andrew, then at his death passed on to his daughters as part of his estate. A considerable settlement, however, was paid to settle claims by Abby's family. Despite the acquittal, Lizzy was ostracised by Fall River society. Her name again was brought into the public eye when she was accused of shoplifting in 1897 in Providence, Rhode Island. In 1905, shortly after an argument over a party that Lisbeth had given for actress Nance O'Neill, Emma moved out of the house and she never saw her sister again. So, yeah, there was more to that, but never mind. Lizzy was ill in her last year following the removal of her gallbladder. She died of pneumonia on June the 1st, 1927, in Fall River. Funeral details were not published and few attended. 9 days later, Emma died from chronic kidney failure at the age of 76 in a nursing home in Newmarket, New Hampshire. Having moved to this location in 1923, both for health reasons and to avoid renewed publicity following the publication of another book about the murders. The sisters, neither of whom had ever married, were buried side by side in the family plot in Oak Grove Cemetery. At the time of her death, Lizzy was worth over $250,000, equivalent to $4,938,000. $4 million. She owned a house on the corner of French Street and Belmont Street, several office buildings, shares in several utilities, 2 cars, and a large amount of jewellery. She left $30,000 to the Full Animal Rescue League, $500 in a trust for the care of her father's grave. Her closest friend and cousin each received £6,000, substantial sums at the time of the estate's distribution. I mean, that's a lot of money in them days. And numerous friends and family members each received between $1,000 and $5,000 in there. Okay, so I have a little weird thing now. There is this little skipping rope rhyme that is about the Bordens, obviously. But yeah, I'm gonna I'm gonna do it just for because it's here. So okay. So it's a skipping rope rhyme that was constantly around at the time. So Lizzy Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Completely inaccurate, but we know how things blow up over time. Andrew Borden is now dead. Lizzy hit him on the head. Up in heaven he will sing. On the gallows she will swing. So there you go. Nice way to end this story. There is so much about this case in music, radio, film, theatre, television, books, there's just so much about it, and it's about, she was acquitted of murder. I personally, my personal opinion, I think she did it. And she was seen going into the cellar with a bucket, and the police officer didn't sort of go, "What you doing?" No? Okay. So, I personally think she did it. Yeah. Lizzy Borden took an axe. Okay, so that is me, guys. I hope you have a fabulous day. Thank you for joining me. If you do enjoy my true crime series and you want it more than once a week, please let me know. But please do consider hitting that subscribe button. It means a lot. Yeah. If you have any suggestions on who you would like me to look into for a future episode, that's also very welcome. If you enjoyed this one video of the Borden murders, please give this video a thumbs up and let me know. I am going to skedaddle because, yeah, it's going to be a long day. We have both kids on school, online learning. Oh, jeez. Okay, guys, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. It's very much appreciated. And I shall see you in another video very soon. Take care. Stay safe. Be alert. Stay home. We're in lockdown. Bye, guys.